consumer sentiment out there is challenging at the moment, driven by a whole host of things, driven by war in Ukraine, driven by inflation, driven by news stories of energy bills going up to £3,000 a year, driven by not really having a prime minister in England, driven by a whole raft of things. And what tends to happen when customer sentiment is challenging is that it's even more difficult to get hold of new customers than it is to retain existing ones. And that's because in that kind of marketplace, classically, that uncertain outlook removes risk from customer behavior. And risk in customer behavior is trying brands that they've never tried before. They're not going to move into areas they haven't tried before. And so recruitment, while there's a headwind of 10 to 15% in the general market, there's a much stronger headwind in recruitment. And the headwind in recruitment is, for most people we talk to or deal with, 20% plus. Added to that, as well as that headwind in terms of challenging conversion rates, we've also got media cost inflation in almost all markets, but not all. In almost all markets, we're actually beginning to see some media cost deflation in some of the markets, in some of the channels that we deal with. So in paper, I've never seen inflation like it. Paper has had more than 30% year-on-year inflation. Print is inflating at somewhere around 15, 16%, and post had an inflation increase of 8.5%. So direct mail has become significantly more expensive. Paid social and paid search, we are seeing inflation rates in those media areas of more than 15% on a year-on-year basis. But the most recent month has actually seen a leveling off and perhaps even some beginnings of some deflation in paid social arenas, where there are signs of traffic recovery. So as online traffic recovers, you would expect the media to begin to level out and perhaps begin to become a little cheaper. And that's looking to be the case in some of the digital channels at the moment. Other channels outside of those, TV, there are beginning to be some deals, the kind of which I haven't seen since mid-COVID, when they were almost giving it away. So there are some really solid deals out there on TV, particularly for first-time advertisers. There's also the beginnings and signs of some very cheap display space in the physical world. So what used to be called off-the-page marketing, there are signs of some very, very cheap space available there that hasn't been for some time. So while there are certainly media cost inflation pressures, there are also bargains to be had in one or two areas, and some signs that it's beginning to ease off in one or two of the other areas. I can't at the moment see how it's at the time at which it's going to ease off in terms of paper and print. I was looking at the paper futures market. Did you know that there was such a thing? There is. You can invest in a paper futures market, and the paper futures market is suggesting that paper is going nowhere in terms of price in the short term. If anything, the futures market is suggesting that there's another 5 or 6% to come. So those are challenges, and those are challenges in media cost inflation, and then obviously we're dealing with all of our own product cost inflation and logistics inflation on top of that. And I certainly know that a few of us have seen that we've also got, and I think to call it the Great Resignation is probably a little bit overrated, but it's become more challenging to find talent and to retain talent in our people than it has been for some considerable time, particularly in the more technical areas. So particularly in technical online marketing roles, analysts, coders, programmers, those kind of areas have become more and more challenging in terms of getting people on board and holding on to them. And then there are some kind of technical changes happening that we need to align ourselves to. So Universal Analytics, or GA as we have all called it for about the last, I don't know, 15 years, is going to move on to GA4. Now, that's not happening, and they're not turning off Universal Analytics for 357 days. But At the time they turn it off, you will lose everything if you haven't started translating over. So if you're not in the process of porting over to GA4, then you really should be by now. You really should have started thinking about what your parallel run strategy is going to look like and how you're going to understand the differences between GA4 reporting and Universal Analytics. And then, and it's been out there as a market, it's been out there as a tool from Google for about 6 months or so, but we're seeing more and more people shift their Google spend into PMax or Performance Max, away from the more traditional pay-per-click spend in the search and shopping spaces. And mostly we're seeing people have some really strong results on PMax. What it's allowing people to do is increase their spend at the same return on investment they were seeing before. So it allows them to get broader reach at the same economies of scale that they were previously seeing. Google has a very big media availability. They own media in the display arena, in shopping, in search, they own media all over the place. You're effectively going in and saying to Google, I need a return on investment of 6 times my spend. You spend it in the best way algorithmically to get that return on investment, and they will spend it. They will create linear customer journeys. They'll create sequential customer journeys. They'll spend it in the best possible way to give you a return on that cash.